Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the world of school cafeterias that smelled like corn and mystery meat, metal lunchboxes that clanged when you set them down, and the quiet social language written in every sandwich wrapped in wax paper. We're talking about 1950s America, specifically what your lunchbox said about your family, your neighborhood, and your place in a world that was changing faster than anyone quite realized. Before we dive in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this quiet corner of the internet where history and nostalgia hold hands over a thermos of tomato soup. And thank you for being here. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I know someone out there is watching at 2 a.m, eating crackers in bed, confidently pretending this counts as productivity. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise breeze, wiggle down under your blanket, and get comfortable. Really comfortable. Like I'm not moving for 8 hours unless there is a comfortable fire. Because tonight we're exploring a world where what you brought for lunch mattered more than you might think. Where a peanut butter sandwich could signal one kind of family, and a Tupperware container of last night's pot roast could signal another. Where the contents of your lunchbox told stories your mother never meant to share, and where even the humble bologna sandwich carried weight. Have you ever wondered what it really felt like to open a metal lunchbox in a crowded school cafeteria? What did the other kids bring? How did you know, just by looking, which families had a little more and which were getting by on less? What did it smell like when everyone opened their lunches at once? Did the popular kids bring better lunches? Or was that just something we made up later? And what was it like to be the only kid with a warm lunch when everyone else had sandwiches? Or the only one without a lunchbox at all? And more importantly, could you survive a single lunch period in a 1950s schoolroom? Could you handle the social pressure, the quiet judgments, the unspoken rules about what was acceptable and what was not, all communicated through food? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1953. Your mother is in the kitchen packing your lunch. The metal lunchbox sits open on the counter, waiting, and the day is just beginning. The lunchbox is not just a container, it is a statement, a small metal billboard announcing who you are before you even open your mouth. In 1950s America, nearly every schoolchild carries one, swinging it by the handle as they walk to school, the metal clanging gently against their leg with each step. These lunchboxes are heavy, sturdy, built to survive being dropped, kicked, sat on, and occasionally used as weapons in playground disputes. They come in every colour and pattern imaginable: cowboys and spacemen, cartoon characters and ballerinas, fire engines and circus animals. Your lunchbox is your first taste of personal branding, chosen carefully, or sometimes not carefully at all, simply handed down from an older sibling who outgrew Roy Rogers. The weight of it surprises you the first time you carry one. It has substance, heft, a satisfying density that makes you feel like you're carrying something important. The metal is cool to the touch in the morning, warming slightly as the day progresses and the sun beats down during recess. The handle is curved, designed to fit a small hand, though it digs into your palm if you carry it too long without switching sides. The latch clicks with a decisive snap, a sound that promises security, that assures you nothing inside will spill or escape during your walk to school. The images on the outside matter more than adults realise. A hop-along Cassidy lunchbox marks you as a fan of westerns, of cowboys and frontier justice, of a world where good guys always win and horses never tire. A spaceman lunchbox suggests you're forward-thinking, that you watch the science programs on television, that you believe in rockets and the future. A Disney princess lunchbox for girls signals something about femininity and fairy tales, about believing in magic and happy endings. The images are bold, colourful, printed directly onto the metal or affixed as decals that peel slightly at the edges after months of use. Some lunchboxes are plain, solid colours without any characters or scenes, which carries its own message. It suggests practicality over fantasy, or perhaps a family that cannot afford the premium for licensed images. These plain lunchboxes are often red or blue, sometimes black, with only a simple clasp and handle to distinguish them. They do their job without flourish, without calling attention to themselves, which is sometimes exactly what a child needs. The dome-shaped top is standard, curving gently upward to create space inside for a thermos, which screws into a designated holder moulded into the metal. This is engineering genius, really. A complete meal delivery system designed for durability and function. The inside of the lunchbox sometimes has a faint metallic smell, mingling with whatever food has been packed there repeatedly. Over time it develops its own unique scent, a combination of peanut butter oil, apple juice residue, and the faint tang of milk that once spilled and was wiped up but never quite disappeared. You carry this lunchbox every school day, rain or shine, hot or cold. It becomes an extension of yourself, as familiar as your jacket or your shoes. You know exactly how it sounds when you set it down on a desk. You know the resistance of the latch, the way it sticks slightly if you press it wrong. You know the cool smoothness of the handle, the small dent on one corner from the time you dropped it running for the bus. This lunchbox is yours, and in a world where so much is dictated by adults, by rules and schedules and expectations, it is one of the few things that feels personal, chosen, distinctly your own. Your mother wakes before you do, moving quietly through the kitchen in her housecoat and slippers, assembling your lunch with the same steady efficiency she brings to every morning task. She stands at the counter, bread slices laid out in a neat row, spreading peanut butter or mayonnaise with practiced strokes. The choices she makes are not random. They are shaped by the grocery budget, by what is left in the icebox, by what she knows you will actually eat, and by what she hopes will make you look cared for when you sit down among the other children. This is not just food. It is her quiet message to the world that she is doing her best, that her family is managing, that you are loved even when she cannot be there to see you eat. She works by the light of the kitchen window, dawn just beginning to soften the darkness outside. The coffee percolator burbles on the stove, filling the room with its rich, bitter aroma. Your father will be up soon, needing breakfast before he leaves for work. Your siblings are still asleep upstairs, their lunches waiting to be packed after yours. But right now, in this quiet moment, her attention is focused entirely on the sandwich she's making, the apple she's polishing, the cookie she's wrapping in wax paper. Her hands move with the confidence of repetition. This is not the first lunch she has packed, not even the 100th. She's been doing this since you started school, and she will continue doing it until you are old enough to pack your own, which she both looks forward to and quietly dreads. There is something meditative about the routine, the simple, necessary task of making sure you are fed. It grounds her in a way that the larger worries of life, the bills, the repairs needed on the house, the tensions with your father, cannot quite reach. She considers what to pack with the care of someone planning a small campaign. You did not eat your carrots yesterday, so she does not pack them today. You mentioned liking the oatmeal cookie she made last week, so she tucks 2 into your lunchbox instead of 1. The bread is fresh, bought yesterday at the bakery, softer and more expensive than what she usually buys, but she wanted something nice for the start of the school week. She spreads the peanut butter evenly, reaching all the way to the edges so there are no dry corners. She adds jelly, not too much, just enough to provide sweetness without soaking through the bread. She wraps the sandwich in wax paper, folding the edges precisely, tucking them under so they stay closed. This is an art she has perfected over years. The wax paper crinkles softly in her hands, a sound that has become synonymous with morning, with preparation, with care. She sets the wrapped sandwich in your lunchbox, then reaches for an apple from the bowl on the counter. She examines each one, choosing the firmest, the one without bruises or soft spots. She rinses it under cool water, dries it with a dish towel, and places it carefully beside the sandwich. The cookies go in last, wrapped in their own piece of wax paper, a small treat to end your meal. She baked them 2 nights ago after dinner while you were doing homework at the kitchen table. You watched her measure flour and sugar, crack eggs into the bowl, stir the thick dough. She let you lick the spoon, a privilege that made you feel included in the magic of creation. Now those cookies, golden and slightly crisp at the edges, are going with you to school, a tangible piece of home tucked into metal and wax paper. She closes the lunchbox, snaps the latch, and sets it by the door where you will grab it on your way out. Then she turns back to the counter to start the next lunch, the next sandwich, the next small act of love that no one will see, but everyone will taste. The sandwich is the cornerstone of every lunchbox, the reliable centre around which everything else arranges itself. In the 1950s, sandwiches are simple, practical, built to survive several hours at room temperature without turning tragic. White bread is standard, soft and squishy, the kind that compresses when you bite it and sometimes sticks slightly to the roof of your mouth. The fillings vary by family, by region, by what your mother believes constitutes a proper lunch. Peanut butter and jelly is common, dependable, sweet enough to feel like a small reward. Bologna is popular, thin pink circles that taste faintly of salt and mystery. Some children bring cheese, maybe a slice of leftover meatloaf, occasionally tuna salad that smells a little too enthusiastically by lunchtime. The sandwich is wrapped in wax paper, folded neatly, tucked into the lunchbox like a small edible promise. You unwrap it carefully at lunch, peeling back the wax paper to reveal the 2 slices pressed together, sealed at the edges where the peanut, butter and jelly have mingled. The bread is compressed slightly from the weight of the apple sitting on top of it, leaving a faint indentation. This does not bother you. It is expected, normal, part of the architecture of a packed lunch. The first bite is always the best, when the flavours are still bright and the bread has not yet become too soft or too dry. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches taste like childhood itself, a flavour so familiar it barely registers as taste, more like comfort made edible. The peanut butter sticks to the roof of your mouth, requiring your tongue to work it loose, a pleasant distraction during lunch. The jelly, usually grape or strawberry, provides sweetness and moisture, preventing the sandwich from being too dry. Your mother has learned the exact ratio, enough jelly to taste it, but not so much that it soaks through the bread and makes everything sticky. Bologna sandwiches are different, more savoury, more grown up somehow. The meat is slippery, pale pink, uniform in a way that suggests machinery rather than nature. It is often accompanied by a thin smear of mustard or mayonnaise, sometimes a wilted piece of lettuce that has gone slightly translucent from sitting against the moisture. Bologna has a distinct taste, hard to describe but instantly recognisable, salty and processed and oddly satisfying. Some mothers cut the sandwich into triangles, which makes it feel fancier, more deliberate. Others leave it as 2 rectangles, practical and efficient. Cheese sandwiches are plain, almost austere, just bread and a slice or 2 of American cheese, the kind that comes individually wrapped in plastic and tastes mildly of milk and salt. These sandwiches are often packed when there's nothing else available, or when your mother knows you've been sick and need something bland and easy to digest. They're not exciting, but they are reliable, and sometimes reliability is exactly what you need. Some children bring sandwiches made with leftover meat, from dinner, thin slices of pot roast or ham, sometimes still faintly warm if they were packed that morning. These sandwiches have more substance, more flavour, and they mark you as coming from a household where meals are hearty and there is enough to have extra. The other children notice these sandwiches, ask about them, sometimes offer trades. The wax paper becomes part of the sandwich experience. You smooth it out on the table in front of you, creating a clean surface for eating. When you finish, you fold it back up, creasing it along the original lines, and tuck it back into your lunchbox. Some children discard it, tossing it into the trash bin at the end of the cafeteria, but many save it, bringing it home to be washed and reused because wax paper costs money and waste is not encouraged. The sandwich, simple as it is, carries the weight of expectation. It needs to be filling enough to sustain you through the afternoon. It needs to taste good enough that you actually eat it rather than trading it away or throwing it out. It needs to survive the journey from kitchen to cafeteria without falling apart, and somehow, most of the time, it manages all of this. A small miracle of bread and filling wrapped in paper. Fruit in a 1950s lunchbox is a mark of care, a sign that someone thought about balance, about vitamins, about making sure you have something fresh and sweet to end your meal. Most often it's an apple, red or green, polished until it shines, small enough to fit in a child's hand. Sometimes it is a banana, already beginning to bruise by the time lunch arrives, its skin marked with brown freckles. Oranges appear occasionally, though they require peeling and produce a sticky mess that clings to your fingers for the rest of the afternoon. Grapes are a luxury, carefully washed and packed in a small paper bag. The fruit is always whole, never cut, because cut fruit browns and bruising in a lunchbox is a kind of small tragedy your mother works hard to avoid. Apples are the most common, dependable across all seasons, available at every grocery store and farm stand. Your mother chooses them carefully, examining each one for soft spots or wormholes, selecting only the firmer specimens. She rinses them under cool water, dries them with a clean towel, and sometimes, if she has time, buffs them with the hem of her apron until they gleam like something from a still life painting. Red delicious apples are popular, with their deep crimson skin and elongated shape. Granny Smiths appear in lunchboxes less often, their tartness considered too sharp for children, though you secretly prefer them for the way they make your mouth pucker and water. The apple sits in your lunchbox beside your sandwich, its weight and roundness a comforting presence. By lunchtime it has warmed slightly, no longer cool from the refrigerator but not yet warm from the room. You lift it from the lunchbox, feeling its smooth skin against your palm, and take your first bite. The skin breaks with a satisfying snap, and the flesh inside is crisp, juicy, releasing a spray of sweetness that runs down your chin if you're not careful. You eat around the core, leaving behind the seeds and the tough, fibrous centre, which you wrap in your sandwich's wax paper and tuck back into your lunchbox to throw away later. Bananas are softer, sweeter, easier to eat but more fragile. Your mother packs them knowing they will likely be bruised by lunch, the skin marked with brown spots where the fruit inside has been pressed too hard. You peel the banana carefully, pulling the skin back in sections, revealing the pale yellow flesh. It is soft on your tongue, almost creamy, with a sweetness that feels indulgent compared to an apple's crisp brightness. The smell of banana fills the air around you, distinctly tropical, out of place in a Midwestern school cafeteria, but welcome nonetheless. Oranges are a commitment. They require effort, patience, a willingness to get sticky. You dig your thumbnail into the thick skin, releasing a burst of citrus oil that coats your fingers and scents the air. You peel away sections of skin, pulling off the white pith that clings stubbornly to the fruit. Finally, you break the orange into segments, each one a small burst of juice and sweetness. The effort is worth it, but by the time you finish, your hands are sticky, Your desk is littered with peels, and you smell like orange for the rest of the afternoon. Grapes are a rare treat, reserved for special occasions or weeks when your father got a good paycheck. Your mother washes them carefully, pulling them from the stem and packing them in a small paper bag. You eat them one at a time, feeling each one burst between your teeth, releasing its sweet juice. They are cool, refreshing, gone too quickly, a luxury you savour because you know they will not appear again for a while. The fruit is not optional. Your mother includes it because she knows about vitamins, about health, about the importance of fresh food even when the budget is tight. It is her way of ensuring that even if the sandwich is simple, even if there is no cookie or treat, you still have something wholesome, something that grew in sunlight and rain and carries that goodness with it into your lunch. The thermos is a marvel of modern engineering, a small miracle that keeps hot things hot and cold things cold through some kind of magic your mother does not fully understand but trusts completely. It screws into the top of your lunchbox, fitting snugly into its designated spot, a cylindrical companion to your sandwich and fruit. Inside might be soup, tomato or chicken noodle, still steaming when you unscrew the cap at lunchtime, filling the air with a warm, comforting smell that makes the other children glance over. Or it might be milk, cold and fresh, a luxury when most children drink from the small cartons provided by the school. Some mothers pack juice, apple or grape, sweet and slightly pulpy. The thermos is a sign of effort, of planning, of a mother who wants you to have something warm or something cold depending on the season. The thermos itself is a work of industrial art, metal on the outside, glass-lined on the inside, with a vacuum seal between the two layers that traps temperature the way a cocoon protects a caterpillar. Your mother fills it carefully, tilting it slightly to avoid spills, screwing the cap on tightly to ensure nothing leaks during your walk to school. The cap doubles as a cup, a clever design that means you can pour your soup or milk rather than drinking directly from the wide mouth of the thermos itself. On cold days, the thermos contains soup. Your mother heats it on the stove that morning, stirring it while she watches the clock, making sure it is hot enough to stay warm for hours, but not so hot it will burn your mouth at lunch. Tomato soup is common, bright red and slightly sweet, tasting faintly of basil and cream. Chicken noodle soup appears often in winter, pale yellow broth filled with soft noodles and small chunks of chicken that fall apart when you bite them. Occasionally there is vegetable soup, thick with carrots and potatoes, hearty and filling, the kind of soup that makes you feel warm from the inside out. When you unscrew the cap at lunchtime, steam rises in a small cloud, carrying with it the scent of whatever is inside. The soup pours slowly, thickly, into the cap-turned cup. You lift it carefully, blowing gently across the surface to cool it, and take your first sip. The warmth spreads through you, a comfort that goes beyond mere temperature. It is the warmth of home, of your mother's kitchen, of being cared for even when she cannot be there. On hot days, the thermos contains something cold. Milk, most often, poured fresh from the bottle that morning, still cold from the refrigerator. Your mother adds ice to keep it chilled, trusting the thermos to maintain the temperature through the morning. By lunch, the ice is melted slightly, diluting the milk just a bit, but it is still cold, still refreshing, still better than the warm milk cartons some schools provide. You drink it slowly, savouring the coolness, the way it cuts through the heaviness of your sandwich. Some children have juice in their thermoses, a luxury that suggests abundance, a family that can afford the extra expense of bottled juice. Apple juice is common, golden and sweet, tasting of concentrated fruit and sugar. Grape juice is darker, richer, staining your lips purple and leaving a lingering sweetness on your tongue. Orange juice appears occasionally, though its acidity sometimes reacts with the metal of the thermos, creating an odd taste that makes children wrinkle their noses. The thermos is not without its challenges. The glass lining is fragile, prone to shattering if you drop the thermos or knock it too hard against something. When the glass breaks, the thermos loses its insulating properties, becoming just an ordinary metal cylinder that cannot keep anything hot or cold. Your mother treats it with respect bordering on reverence, warning you repeatedly to be careful, to set it down gently, to never ever drop it. Cleaning the thermos is its own ritual, one your mother performs every evening after dinner. She unscrews the cap, pours out any remaining liquid, and rinses the inside with hot water. Sometimes she uses a bottle brush, a long thin tool designed specifically for reaching the bottom of narrow containers. She sets it upside down on the counter to dry overnight, ensuring no moisture remains to grow mold or create odours. This care, this attention, is part of the larger care she provides, mostly unseen, always essential. Tucked into the corner of your lunchbox, wrapped in wax paper or a napkin, is the treat, the small sweet reward that makes lunch feel less like obligation and more like event. In the 1950s, this is most often a homemade cookie baked the night before, still faintly warm when your mother packs it. Chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, peanut butter with the fork marks pressed into the top. Sometimes it is a brownie, dense and fudgy, leaving a smear of chocolate on the wax paper. Occasionally it is store-bought, a packaged cupcake or a handful of vanilla wafers, which carry a different kind of prestige because they come from the grocery store and look like something you might see in a magazine. The treat is non-negotiable, a small kindness your mother includes because childhood should have moments of sweetness. The cookie is not large. Resources are limited. Ingredients must stretch to feed the whole family, and treats are meant to be enjoyed, not indulged in to excess. It is perhaps 3 inches across, golden brown at the edges, softer in the centre. You save it for last, the final note in the symphony of your lunch, dessert after the sandwich and fruit have been consumed. The anticipation makes it taste better, sweeter, more special than it would be if you ate it first. Chocolate chip cookies are the favourite of most children, small pockets of melted chocolate embedded in buttery dough. Your mother makes them from a recipe she memorised years ago. Cream butter and sugar until fluffy, add eggs and vanilla, fold in flour and chocolate chips. She bakes them on a cookie sheet, watching through the oven window as they spread and brown, pulling them out at just the right moment so they're crisp on the outside and chewy within. When they cool, she stores them in a tin on the counter, packing 1 or 2 each morning into lunchboxes. Oatmeal raisin cookies are heartier, more substantial, filled with rolled oats and plump raisins that burst between your teeth. Some children dislike the raisins, picking them out and leaving them on the table, but others appreciate the chewiness, the slight sweetness tempered by the wholesome taste of oats. These cookies make mothers feel virtuous, as though they are providing nutrition, disguised as dessert. Peanut butter cookies are distinctive, marked with the crosshatch pattern from a fork pressed into the dough before baking. They are dense, rich, tasting strongly of peanuts and sugar. They crumble slightly when you bite them, requiring you to hold your hand under your chin to catch the pieces. The peanut butter flavour coats your mouth, lingering long after the cookie is gone. Brownies appear less frequently, reserved for special occasions or weeks when your mother had extra cocoa powder and felt ambitious. They are cut into squares, wrapped carefully to prevent the chocolate from smearing everywhere, and tucked into your lunchbox like a small treasure. The texture is dense, almost fudgy, and the chocolate taste is intense, adult, satisfying in a way that regular cookies are not. Store-bought treats carry a different appeal. They come in cellophane wrappers, printed with bright colours and brand names. Twinkies, with their golden cake and cream filling, Hostess, cupcakes, chocolate with white squiggles across the top. Vanilla wafers, thin and crisp, tasting of sugar and simplicity. These treats suggest convenience, modernity, a family that can afford the extra cost of pre-packaged food. Children who have them in their lunchboxes are envied, not because the treats taste better than homemade, they often do not, but because they represent something aspirational, something new, the treats always saved for last. This is an unwritten rule, a piece of lunchbox etiquette that every child understands instinctively. You eat your sandwich first, then your fruit, and only then, when the nutritious parts are finished, do you allow yourself the cookie or brownie or cupcake. This delayed gratification makes the treat more precious, transforms it from mere food into reward, into celebration, into proof that you did what you were supposed to do. Some children trade their treats, offering their oatmeal raisin cookie for someone else's chocolate chip, bartering their brownie for a store-bought cupcake. These trades are negotiations, small lessons in value and desire, in recognizing what you want versus what you have. A homemade cookie might be traded for a piece of fruit, a brownie for a handful of chips. The social currency of lunchboxes is complex, unspoken, but universally understood. The moment you open your lunchbox in the school cafeteria, you're opening more than just a container. You're revealing your family circumstances, your mother's skill in the kitchen, your household's priorities, and sometimes, inadvertently, your family's struggles. The other children notice. They always notice. Not with cruelty necessarily, though that exists too, but with the quiet, observant awareness that children possess. A lunchbox packed with care, with variety, with a homemade cookie and a shiny apple, suggests stability, attention, love. A lunchbox with the same peanut butter sandwich every single day suggests routine, maybe limited, resources, maybe a mother too tired to vary the menu. A lunchbox with leftovers still warm in a thermos suggests a family that eats well, that has enough to share. Children are remarkably perceptive about these things. They may not articulate it, may not even consciously think about it, but they register the differences. They see who has a thermos and who does not. They notice who brings fresh fruit every day and who brings a bruised apple 3 days in a row. They observe whose sandwich is made with bakery bread and whose is made with the cheapest loaf from the grocery store, the kind that tears when you spread peanut butter on it. The lunchbox becomes a window into the household, revealing information your mother never intended to share. A lunch packed with obvious care, sandwich cut into triangles, apple polished to a shine, cookie wrapped in a fresh napkin, signals a mother with time and attention to spare. A lunch thrown together hastily, sandwich uneven, fruit unwashed, no treat at all, signals a mother who's overwhelmed, working multiple jobs, or simply too exhausted to care about presentation. Economic status shows itself in subtle ways. The child with a slice of leftover roast beef in their sandwich comes from a household where meat is plentiful enough to have extra. The child with a cheese sandwich made from government cheese comes from a household struggling to make ends meet. The child with a store-bought cupcake has parents with disposable income. The child with no dessert at all has parents who cannot afford extras. But the lunchbox also reveals love, or the absence of it, in ways that transcend economics. A poor family might pack a simple lunch, just bread and butter with an apple. But if that bread is fresh and the apple is carefully chosen, and there is a note tucked inside written in a mother's hand, the love is visible, tangible. Conversely, a wealthy family might pack an elaborate lunch, but if it is clearly assembled by hired help, impersonal and perfect, it lacks the warmth that comes from a mother's hands. Children understand this instinctively. They know the difference between a lunch packed with care and a lunch packed with money. They can sense when someone's mother woke early to bake cookies just for them, versus when someone's cook simply grabbed a package from the pantry. These distinctions matter in ways adults often miss, shaping friendships, creating hierarchies, building the social structures that will follow these children into adulthood. The lunchbox also reveals priorities. Some families prioritize nutrition above all else, packing balanced meals with vegetables, protein, fruit, and whole grains. Other families prioritize treats, including cookies or candy even when the main course is sparse. Some families prioritize convenience, relying heavily on packaged foods that require no preparation. Each choice tells a story about what the family values, what they can afford, what they have time for. There is shame sometimes in what a lunchbox reveals. The child who opens their lunchbox to find nothing but a mayonnaise sandwich and a bruised banana feels that shame acutely, especially when the child beside them has leftover fried chicken and homemade pie. That shame is quiet, internalized, rarely spoken aloud, but it shapes how children see themselves, how they understand their place in the world. They learn too young that some people have more and some have less, and that these differences are visible in ways both large and small. But there is also pride. The child who opens their lunchbox to find their favourite cookies, baked specially by their mother, feels pride. The child whose sandwich is made exactly the way they like it, with the crust cut off and the perfect amount of jelly, feels seen, known, valued. The lunchbox becomes proof of love, evidence that someone cares enough to pay attention to their preferences. The school cafeteria in 1953 is a large, echoing room that smells like industrial cleaning solution, boiled vegetables, and children. Long tables stretch in rows, their surfaces scarred with decades of pencil marks, carved initials, and mysterious stains. The floor is linoleum, scuffed and squeaking under the shuffle of small shoes. Light pours through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily through the air. At one end of the room, the lunch ladies stand behind a metal counter, serving hot lunches to the children whose families can afford them or who qualify for the reduced price program. The noise level is astonishing. Hundreds of young voices bouncing off the walls, blending into a constant hum of chatter, laughter, and the occasional shout from a teacher trying to restore order. The tables are long benches, attached to the tables themselves, making it impossible to rearrange seating. Each table seats perhaps 20 children, 10 on each side, shoulder to shoulder, close enough to share germs and secrets in equal measure. The benches are hard, unforgiving, designed for durability rather than comfort. The tables are marked with the graffiti of previous generations, hearts carved into the wood, initials connected with plus signs, mysterious symbols whose meanings have been lost to time. The walls are painted a pale institutional green, the kind of colour chosen not for beauty but for its ability to hide dirt and scuff marks. Posters hang at intervals, promoting good hygiene, encouraging students to drink their milk, reminding them that strong bodies build strong minds. A large clock hangs above the lunch lady's counter, its minute hand jerking forward in visible increments, counting down the precious minutes of lunch period. The windows are tall, reaching nearly to the ceiling, letting in great swathes of natural light that create patterns on the floor. In winter, these windows let in cold as well, drafts that make the children nearest them huddle in their sweaters. In spring and fall they are opened, letting in fresh air that carries the scent of cut grass and flowering trees, briefly overwhelming the institutional smell of the cafeteria itself. The lunch lady's counter is a barrier between the children and the kitchen beyond, a gleaming metal surface that catches and reflects the overhead lights. Behind it, you can glimpse the kitchen itself, enormous pots steaming on industrial stoves, metal serving trays stacked in towers, the lunch ladies moving with practiced efficiency through their domain. The counter has a sneeze guard, a clear plastic barrier that protects the food from children's breath and germs. though it also makes the lunch ladies seem distant, separated, almost untouchable. The smell of the cafeteria is complex, layered, not entirely pleasant, but familiar enough to be comforting. There is the sharp tang of industrial cleaner, applied every morning by the custodian who mops the floors before students arrive. There is the smell of whatever hot lunch is, being served, meatloaf or macaroni or stew, each with its own distinct aroma that mingles with the others. There is the smell of milk, dozens of small cartons open simultaneously, releasing their faint sweetness into the air. And underneath it all is the smell of children themselves, a mixture of soap and dirt and the faint mustiness of wool coats hung in cloakrooms. The noise is relentless. Conversations overlap, creating a wall of sound that makes it difficult to hear the person next to you without leaning in close. Laughter erupts in bursts, sudden and loud, drawing the attention of teachers who scan the room for trouble. The clatter of utensils on trays provides percussion. The scrape of benches being slid in and out adds bass notes. Occasionally a tray is dropped, crashing to the floor with a sound that momentarily silences the entire room, followed by applause and cheers from the students, groans from the child who dropped it. The cafeteria is democracy in action. Here, the children of factory workers sit beside the children of doctors. The children from the good neighbourhood mingle with the children from the edge of town. Economic differences are visible but not enforced. Everyone eats together, shares the same space, breathes the same air thick with the smell of green beans and institutional bread. You sit down at your assigned table, the metal bench cool beneath you, and set your lunchbox on the table with a soft clang. Around you, other children are doing the same. A symphony of clicks and snaps as lunchboxes open. Thermoses and screw, wax paper crinkles. You flip the latch and lift the lid, revealing the contents your mother packed hours ago. The smell hits you first. The familiar scent of your sandwich, the sweetness of your fruit, maybe the faint aroma of soup if you brought a thermos. You reach in carefully, pulling out each item and arranging them on the table in front of you like a small personal buffet. The wax paper crinkles in your hands, the apple gleams. The cookie waits patiently for the end. There is a ritual to this, an order that feels important even though no one explicitly taught it to you. You lift the lunchbox lid and prop it open against the thermos, creating a small privacy screen between you and the chaos of the cafeteria. You reach in and remove items one at a time, setting them carefully on the table. The sandwich comes out first, still wrapped, its shape and weight familiar in your hand. Then the apple or banana, cool and smooth. Then the thermos, unscrewed from its holder with a gentle twist. Finally the treat, wrapped separately, saved for last. The wax paper crinkles loudly in the noisy cafeteria, a sound that is somehow both crisp and soft. You smooth it out flat on the table, creating a clean surface to place your sandwich on. The paper is translucent, showing the faint outline of the sandwich beneath, bread and filling compressed together. You peel back the folds carefully, not wanting to tear the paper, which your mother will expect you to bring home for washing and reuse. The smell of your lunch is intensely personal, distinct from everyone else's even when the contents are similar. Your peanut butter sandwich smells like your kitchen, like the jar your mother keeps in the cupboard, like the bread she bought at your family's preferred bakery. It smells like home in a way that is difficult to articulate but impossible to miss. Around you, other children are opening their own lunchboxes, creating a cacophony of sounds and smells. Metal latches click open. Thermoses hiss as their seals are broken. Wax paper rustles. The air fills with a mixture of scents, peanut butter and bologna, apples and bananas, soup and milk, chocolate and cheese. It is overwhelming and comforting simultaneously, proof that everyone here shares this experience, this daily ritual of eating what was packed by someone who cares. You take your first bite of sandwich. The bread is soft, slightly compressed, from hours in the lunchbox but still fresh enough to taste good. The peanut butter spreads across your tongue, thick and slightly sticky, requiring effort to chew and swallow. The jelly provides sweetness and moisture, cutting through the density of the peanut butter. It is exactly what you expected, exactly what you eat most days, and yet somehow it still satisfies, still feels like a small gift. The act of eating your lunch creates a bubble of privacy in the crowded cafeteria. For these 20 minutes, you are focused on your food, on the simple pleasure of eating something prepared specifically for you. The conversations around you fade into background noise. The social pressures of the school day recede temporarily. There is just you and your sandwich, and the quiet satisfaction of hunger being met. You cannot help but glance sideways at the lunchboxes around you. It is not snooping exactly, just natural curiosity about what everyone else brought. The boy next to you has a thick sandwich, roast beef with lettuce, and a slice of chocolate cake wrapped in foil. The girl across from you has carrot sticks, an orange, and a sandwich cut into neat triangles. Another child has a thermos of soup and crackers. Another has nothing but an apple and a cheese sandwich. You begin to notice patterns. The children from the nicer neighbourhoods tend to have more variety, more treats, thermoses that match their lunchboxes. The children from the edges of town tend to have simpler lunches, often the same thing day after day. No one says anything about it, but everyone knows. The comparisons are automatic, instinctive, part of the social education that happens in cafeterias everywhere. You look at the roast beef sandwich next to you and feel a small flutter of envy. Roast beef is expensive, special, the kind of meat served at Sunday dinners, not packed casually in a weekday lunch. The presence of lettuce suggests care, attention to nutrition and presentation. And the chocolate, cake, wrapped in shiny foil, looks bakery quality, professional, not homemade. You look down at your own peanut butter sandwich, suddenly feeling it is inadequate, despite having been perfectly satisfactory 30 seconds ago. The comparison changes your perception, makes you aware of what you do not have rather than what you do. This is the beginning of a lesson you will learn repeatedly throughout life, that satisfaction is relative, that contentment can be stolen by the simple act of looking sideways. The girl across from you unwraps her sandwich, cut into triangles with the crusts removed. This is a sign of privilege, of a mother with time and attention to spare. Removing crusts is extra work, requires an extra knife, creates waste that many families cannot afford, but it also makes the sandwich look special, dainty, more appealing somehow. Her carrot sticks are fresh, crisp, cut into uniform lengths and packed in a small container. Her orange is large, unblemished, the kind you see in store displays but rarely in actual lunchboxes. You notice who has thermoses and who does not. The thermos is a status symbol, a mark of families who can afford the extra equipment, who have mothers organised enough to fill them every morning. The children with thermoses tend to have more elaborate lunches overall, suggesting households with more resources, more time, more of everything. You notice who has treats and who does not. Cookies and brownies appear in some lunchboxes but not others. Store-bought treats, packaged and shiny, mark certain children as coming from families with disposable income. Homemade treats suggest different priorities, mothers who bake rather than buy, who invest time rather than money. The patterns become clearer the longer you observe. Children from the wealthier neighbourhoods have lunches with variety, different sandwiches each day, multiple fruits, elaborate desserts. Children from working-class families have simpler lunches, more repetition, fewer extras. Children from struggling families sometimes have lunches that seem barely adequate. A single sandwich and maybe a piece of fruit. Nothing extra, nothing special. These observations create a silent hierarchy, A social order based partly on economics, partly on family circumstances, partly on factors beyond anyone's control. The children with better lunches tend to be more confident, more socially secure. The children with simpler lunches tend to be quieter, more reserved, as if understanding instinctively that they occupy a lower rung on the invisible ladder. But the comparisons go both ways. Sometimes you glance at a lunchbox and feel grateful rather than envious. The child next to you has only a mayonnaise sandwich and a bruised banana. Mayonnaise on bread, nothing else. Just white bread and a thin smear of mayonnaise. It looks sad, inadequate, barely qualifying as food. Your peanut butter sandwich suddenly seems abundant by comparison, rich and satisfying. Your shiny apple looks like a treasure. You begin to understand in a vague, inarticulate way that some families have more and some have less, and that these differences are visible in the contents of a metal lunchbox. You begin to understand that your own family falls somewhere in the middle, neither wealthy nor poor, managing but not thriving, doing their best with what they have. This knowledge is both comforting and unsettling, providing context but also raising questions you're not yet ready to ask. Some children do not bring lunchboxes at all. They line up instead at the cafeteria counter, shuffling forward slowly, trays in hand, waiting for the lunch ladies to serve them the hot lunch of the day. In 1953, this cost a quarter, sometimes less if your family qualifies for assistance, though no one talks about that openly. The hot lunch is usually something hearty and filling: meatloaf with mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese, beef stew with rolls, sloppy joes on soft buns. It comes with a side of canned vegetables, green beans or corn, and a small carton of milk. The children in the hot lunch line regard their meals with a mixture of gratitude and resignation. It is warm, it is filling, and it is the same for everyone, which has its own kind of comfort. The line forms along the wall, snaking past the windows where sunlight streams in and catches the dust. Children hold their trays at chest height, cafeteria issue trays made of hard plastic in colours that might once have been cheerful, but now look faded and institutional. Orange, brown, mustard, yellow. The trays have compartments, sections designed to keep food separate, though everything tends to bleed together anyway, gravy mixing with green beans, milk dripping into mashed potatoes. The lunch ladies serve with mechanical efficiency, scooping portions with practiced precision. One scoop of mashed potatoes placed in the largest compartment, one ladle of gravy poured over the potatoes in a thick, brown river, 2 slices of meatloaf still steaming, edges slightly crispy from the oven, a spoonful of green beans, limp and olive-coloured, occupying the smallest compartment, a roll, soft and white, set on the edge of the tray. Each serving takes perhaps 10 seconds. The lunch lady's hands moving in a rhythm perfected over years, never pausing, never varying. The children shuffle forward, accepting their trays with mumbled thanks, moving toward the milk cooler where small glass bottles wait in rows nestled in ice. They take one bottle, condensation already forming on the glass, and carry their full tray carefully toward the tables. The weight surprises first-timers, the heaviness of a tray loaded with real food, not just sandwiches and fruit, but actual hot meals with substance and heft. The hot lunch is different from lunchbox food in fundamental ways. It is warm, first of all, steam rising from the mashed potatoes and meatloaf, fogging up glasses if you lean too close. The warmth is comforting, especially on cold days when the cafeteria drafts make you shiver. It is also more substantial, more filling, designed to fuel children through long afternoons of learning and playing. A sandwich might leave you slightly hungry by the time school ends. A hot lunch stays with you, sits heavy and satisfied in your stomach. But the hot lunch also marks you as different. The children with trays are visible, identifiable, separate from the children with lunchboxes. They are either the children whose families can afford to pay for convenience, who have mothers working jobs that make morning lunch packing impossible, or they are the children receiving assistance, whose families struggle to make ends meet. The line itself does not distinguish between these two groups. Everyone shuffles forward together, receives the same food, pays the same price, or shows the same ticket. But the other children, the ones with lunchboxes, notice. They watch the line, observing who participates, mentally cataloguing this information for future reference. There is shame sometimes in the hot lunch line, not for everyone, but for some. The child whose family is barely managing, who receives reduced price tickets that mark them as needy, feels that shame acutely. They hold their ticket carefully, trying not to let anyone see it, handing it quickly to the lunch lady who accepts it without comment. The lunch lady has seen thousands of these tickets. She knows which families are struggling. She says nothing, simply serves the food, treats every child with the same brisk efficiency. But there is also pride. The hot lunch is real food, prepared by adults, served on trays like a restaurant. It is varied, different each day, not the same peanut butter sandwich 5 days in a row. Children in the hot lunch line sometimes look at the lunchbox children and feel superior, feel modern, feel like they are part of something bigger than brown bag simplicity. They are eating what the school provides, what the government subsidises in some cases, participating in a system designed to ensure no child goes hungry. The food itself is institutional, but not entirely without merit. The mashed potatoes are smooth, buttery, probably made from flakes rather than actual potatoes, but still comforting in their blandness. The meatloaf is dense, slightly salty, with a ketchup glaze on top that adds sweetness. The green beans are overcooked, their colour faded, but they provide texture and the faint taste of vegetables that mothers insist are necessary. The roll is soft, perfect for soaking up gravy, turning it into a small edible sponge. Milk in the 1950s cafeteria comes in small glass bottles or wax-coated cartons, delivered fresh each morning and kept cool until lunchtime. If you did not bring a thermos, you're expected to buy milk, a nickel for a half pint, cold and slightly sweet, with a layer of cream floating at the top if it has not been shaken. The bottles are heavy, slippery with condensation, and require a certain amount of coordination to open without spilling. The cartons are easier, but less satisfying, their waxy coating leaving a faint taste on your lips. Drinking milk is non-negotiable in this era. It is considered essential for growing bodies, for strong bones and teeth, and teachers watch to make sure every child finishes their portion. Some children love it, others force it down with gritted teeth, trying not to taste it. The glass bottles are small, perhaps 6 inches tall with a narrow neck and a cardboard cap that fits snugly over the opening. The cap has a tab you pull to remove it, revealing the milk beneath. If the milk has not been shaken, the cream is separated and floats on top, thick and yellowish white, rich with fat. Some children shake the bottle vigorously before opening it, mixing the cream back into the milk. Others drink the cream first, enjoying its richness, then finish the thinner milk below. The bottles sweat in. The warm cafeteria, condensation forming in tiny droplets that run down the glass and pool on the table. They leave wet rings on the wood, circles that darken and eventually become permanent marks, part of the table's history. The glass is cold in your hand, almost shockingly cold, chilling your palm and fingers. You grip it carefully, aware that it is slippery, that dropping it would result in shattered glass and spilled milk, and the attention of every person in the cafeteria. The milk itself tastes different from milk today. It is whole milk, full fat, rich and creamy in a way that modern skim milk never achieves. It coats your mouth, leaves a faint film on your tongue, tastes faintly sweet from the natural lactose. Some children think it tastes wonderful, pure and fresh and satisfying. Others find it too heavy, too rich, the cream making them slightly nauseous if they drink it too quickly. The wax-coated cartons are easier to manage but less appealing. They're rectangular, small, printed with dairy logos and nutritional information. They have a strange opening mechanism, triangular flaps that must be pulled apart to create a spout. This requires more coordination than you might expect. Pull too gently and nothing happens. Pull too hard and the carton tears unevenly, creating a jagged edge that drips milk down the side. Teachers occasionally have to help younger children, demonstrating the proper technique, the firm but controlled pull that creates a clean opening. The cartons leave a waxy taste in your mouth, a faint coating that mingles with the milk and creates an odd flavour. You learn to pour carefully, tilting the carton just enough to let the milk flow without gushing. The milk is cold, but not as cold as the bottles, lacking the shocking chill that makes your teeth ache. It is adequate, functional, but somehow less special than milk from a bottle. Drinking milk is enforced with gentle but firm insistence. Teachers patrol the cafeteria during lunch, observing, making sure children finish their milk before leaving. Strong bones, they say, healthy teeth. Growing bodies need calcium. These are the mantras of the era, repeated so often they become background noise, accepted truth that no one questions. The children who genuinely dislike milk, who find it nauseating or simply unpleasant, learn to drink quickly, gulping it down in a few large swallows, trying not to taste it, just getting it over with. Some children are lactose intolerant, though that term does not exist yet in common vocabulary. They drink their milk because they are expected to, then spend the afternoon with stomach cramps and nausea, not understanding why this food that is supposed to be healthy makes them feel ill. Teachers dismiss their complaints, insist they are imagining things, tell them milk is good for them. The children learn to suffer quietly, to not complain, to simply endure. But for most children, the milk is simply part of lunch, as normal and expected as the sandwich or the hot lunch entree. They drink it without thinking much about it, finishing their half pint and setting the empty bottle or crumpled carton aside. It provides calcium and protein and fat nutritional building blocks that paediatricians insist are essential. It is cold and refreshing on hot days. It helps wash down dry sandwiches or salty hot lunches. It is, in its own simple way, a comfort. The cafeteria is not just a place to eat. It is a complex social ecosystem where hierarchies are established, friendships are tested, and status is quietly negotiated. Where you sit matters. Who you sit with matters. What you bring for lunch matters more than it should. The children with elaborate lunches, with thermoses full of soup and homemade cookies, tend to attract attention, admiration, sometimes envy. The children with simpler lunches, with the same peanut butter sandwich every day, learn to eat quietly, to avoid drawing attention to what they have or do not have. It is not cruelty exactly, though sometimes it tips into that. It is simply the way children organize their world, sorting and categorizing, finding their place in the unspoken order. Seating arrangements are both assigned and chosen. Teachers assign you to a table, usually based on your classroom, sometimes based on grade level. But within that table there are gradations, subtle hierarchies that determine where exactly you sit. The most popular children sit in the middle, surrounded by friends and admirers. The moderately popular sit near them, close enough to participate in conversations but not central enough to lead them. The less popular sit at the ends, on the fringes, included but not quite belonging. Your lunchbox influences where you fall in this hierarchy more than you might expect. A child with an impressive lunch, varied and abundant, finds it easier to make friends, to be included in conversations, to be invited to sit in desirable spots. The lunch becomes a conversation, starter, a point of interest, a reason for other children to engage. Can I try your cookie? Where did your mum get that soup? Will you trade me your apple? These questions build connections, create social bonds, integrate you into the group. A child with a plain lunch, repetitive and simple, has fewer opportunities for these interactions. There is nothing to remark upon, nothing to trade, nothing that draws attention or interest. They eat quietly, finish quickly, wait for lunch to end so they can return to class where academic performance might provide different opportunities for status. The lunchbox becomes a silent marker of social standing, visible to everyone, commented upon by no one directly. Popularity in the cafeteria operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There is the popularity of personality, the children who are naturally charismatic, funny, kind, who would be well liked regardless of what they brought for lunch. There is the popularity of appearance, the children who are pretty or handsome by conventional standards, who attract admiration simply by existing. And there is the popularity of circumstance, the children whose families are wealthy or respected, whose last names carry weight in the community, whose advantages extend far beyond the lunchbox but are reflected in it nonetheless. The truly popular children, the ones at the top of the social pyramid, often have lunches that reflect their status. Not always elaborate, not necessarily expensive, but always appropriate, always acceptable, never embarrassing. They have learned, or their mothers have learned, what is considered normal, what is admired, what passes without comment. Their sandwiches are standard but well made. Their fruits are fresh. Their treats are either homemade in ways that demonstrate skill or store-bought in ways that demonstrate means. Nothing about their lunch draws negative attention. The children struggling socially often have lunches that mark them as different, too poor, with makeshift meals assembled from whatever was available, too rich, with elaborate foods that seem ostentatious, out of place in an elementary school cafeteria, too foreign, with foods from other cultures that smell unfamiliar and look strange to children raised on American fare, too health conscious, with whole wheat bread and carrot sticks when everyone else has white bread and cookies. Different is dangerous in the cafeteria. Different draws attention, comment, exclusion. Trading food becomes a way to navigate these social waters. Offering to trade your cookie for someone's apple is not really about wanting the apple. It is about initiating connection, demonstrating that you have something worth trading, establishing that you are part of the social economy of the lunchbox. Accepting a trade validates the other person, acknowledges their worth, includes them. Refusing a trade, or worse, expressing disgust at what someone offers, is a form of social rejection that stings more than it should. Sharing food operates similarly. Offering half your sandwich to someone who forgot their lunch is generosity, but it is also social positioning, demonstrating that you have enough to spare, that you are kind, that you notice when others are struggling. Accepting shared food requires humility, acknowledgement of need, a willingness to be helped. These transactions, small and seemingly insignificant, build the social structure that will follow these children for years. Teachers monitor the cafeteria but often miss these subtle dynamics. They watch for obvious bullying, for food fights, for children leaving the table without permission. But they do not see the quiet exclusions, the whispered comments about someone's lunch, the way certain children are consistently left out of conversations, the small daily cruelties that shape a child's understanding of their place in the world. The cafeteria is where social lessons are learned, where hierarchies are internalized, where children first understand that not everyone is equal, no matter what teachers say in class. Trading food is an art form in the 1950s cafeteria, a delicate negotiation that requires social awareness, bargaining skills, and a willingness to part with something you actually wanted. You are your friend's brownie, They eye your apple. A conversation begins. I will trade you my apple for your brownie. Your friend considers this. Apples are healthy but boring. Brownies are delicious, but their mother only packs them occasionally. They counter-offer. Apple and half your sandwich. You think about this. Your sandwich is peanut butter and jelly. Perfectly acceptable but not particularly exciting. You agree. The trade is made. Items passed across the table. Both parties satisfied. Some children become legendary traders, able to parlay a simple bologna sandwich into an entire feast through strategic negotiation. The best traders understand value in ways that would make economists proud. They know that a homemade cookie is worth more than a store-bought one, but only if the homemade cookie is chocolate chip or peanut butter, not oatmeal raisin, which many children consider the worst possible cookie. They know that a thermos of soup is worth more in winter than in spring, when the warm weather makes hot food less appealing. They know that certain fruits are more desirable than others, that a bunch of grapes can command a higher price than an apple, that a banana is worth less than either because it bruises easily and browns quickly. These traders operate with the confidence of merchants in a marketplace, assessing what they have, what others have, what they want, and how to bridge the gap between desire and reality. They approach other children with proposals, suggesting trades, negotiating terms, finalizing deals. Sometimes they conduct multi-party trades, arranging complex exchanges involving 3 or 4 children, everyone giving up something they have for something they want more. The logistics can become complicated, but the successful traders navigate these complexities with ease. Some items are considered universally valuable, the currency of the cafeteria economy. Chocolate in any form is premium. A chocolate chip cookie can be traded for almost anything. A brownie can command multiple items in return. A candy bar, on the rare occasions when someone brings one, creates a bidding war, children offering their entire lunches for a single bite. Store-bought treats generally trade higher than homemade, not because they taste better, but because they are less common, more modern, more connected to the commercial world that children are increasingly aware of. Certain items are difficult to trade, their value unclear or contested. Vegetables almost never trade successfully. The child trying to offload their carrot sticks or celery finds no interested parties. Healthy items generally trade poorly unless they are fruit, and even fruit has its hierarchies. Milk from a thermos trades better than school milk because it is colder, fresher, special. Leftover meat, while substantive and filling, sometimes trades poorly because it seems too much like real food, too adult, not fun enough for a child's lunch. The act of trading creates bonds between children. Successfully negotiating a trade requires communication, cooperation, mutual respect for the other person's desires. You learn to read social cues, to understand when someone really wants what you have versus when they are just being polite. You learn to value what you own by seeing what others are willing to offer for it. You learn basic economics, supply and demand, scarcity and abundance, all through the simple act of exchanging food. Some children refuse to trade, clutching their lunches protectively, unwilling to give up anything their mother packed. These children are often younger, not yet comfortable with the social dynamics of the cafeteria, or they are children whose families have so little that every item in the lunchbox is precious, cannot be spared. Other children refuse to trade out of principle, believing that their mother packed exactly what they should eat, that deviating from her plan would be disrespectful or unwise. Teachers have mixed feelings about trading. Some allow it freely, seeing it as harmless social interaction, children learning negotiation and compromise. Others forbid it, worried about fairness, concerned that some children will be taken advantage of, that trades will become coercive rather than voluntary. The rules vary by classroom, by school, by individual teacher preference. In rooms where trading is forbidden, it happens anyway, conducted in whispers, Items passed under the table, transactions completed before the teacher notices. The most memorable trades become stories, legends passed from class to class. The child who traded a single cookie for an entire lunch. The child who convinced someone to trade their dessert for a handful of crackers. The child who accumulated 5 different treats through a series of strategic exchanges, ending up with more food than they could possibly eat. These stories are told with admiration, with awe, with a touch of envy for the social skills required to pull off such feats. The lunch ladies are formidable figures in white aprons and hairnets, wielding ladles and serving spoons with the authority of generals commanding troops. They know every child by face if not by name. They know who always takes seconds, who never finishes their vegetables, who tries to sneak extra dessert. They move efficiently behind the counter, scooping mashed potatoes, ladling soup, placing rolls on trays with practiced precision. Their voices carry across the cafeteria, calling out instructions, reminding children to say please and thank you, gently scolding those who waste food. They are stern but not unkind, aware that for some children this hot lunch might be the most substantial meal they eat all day. They make sure portions are generous, that no one leaves hungry. The lunch ladies are mostly older women, mothers themselves or grandmothers, women who have spent their lives feeding people and know how to do it efficiently. Their uniforms are spotless white, crisp despite the heat and chaos of the kitchen. Their hairnets contain every strand, not a single hair escaping to threaten the food. Their hands are strong, capable, marked with small burns and scars from years of working with hot pans and sharp utensils. They arrive at school before dawn, when the building is still dark and silent, and begin preparing the day's meal. They boil water in enormous pots. They brown ground beef in industrial quantities. They open cans of vegetables, dozens at a time, pouring them into warming trays. They mix ingredients, stir sauces, monitor temperatures, all according to recipes scaled up to feed hundreds of children. By the time students arrive, the kitchen is warm and steaming, filled with the smell of whatever is being prepared. They serve with mechanical efficiency, but not without care. They notice the child who looks particularly hungry and quietly adds an extra scoop of potatoes. They notice the child who seems sad and offers a kind word along with their tray. They notice the child who always says thank you and rewards them with a slight smile, a small acknowledgement of good manners. They are not teachers, not administrators, not authority figures in the traditional sense, but they wield their own kind of power, the power of those who control access to food. The children both fear and respect them. Fear because the lunch ladies enforce rules, reprimand those who misbehave in line, report serious infractions to teachers. Respect because the lunch ladies feed them, provide sustenance, care for them in the most basic way possible. A harsh word from a lunch lady stings. Praise from a lunch lady glows warm for days. They tolerate no nonsense in the lunch line. No cutting, no pushing, no complaining about the food. They expect please and thank you, eye contact, basic courtesy. Children who forget these niceties receive sharp reminders, terse corrections delivered in voices that brook no argument. But children who are polite, who wait patiently, who accept what they are served without complaint, receive gentler treatment, sometimes even small extras slipped onto their trays. The lunch ladies know which families are struggling. They see the children on reduced-price lunch tickets, the ones whose clothes are worn, whose faces look tired. They serve these children with extra care, making sure portions are especially generous, sometimes adding a second roll or an extra carton of milk without being asked. They never comment on it, never draw attention to what they're doing, simply serve and move on to the next child. This quiet kindness, invisible to most, makes an enormous difference to families barely holding on. They also know the popular children. the ones from wealthy families, the ones who treat them dismissively or rudely. These children receive no special treatment. Their portions are exact, measured, neither generous nor stingy. The lunch ladies are not vindictive, but they are not particularly warm either. Respect must be earned, and wealth alone does not command it. At the end of each lunch period, the lunch ladies clean. They scrape trays, wash dishes, wipe down counters, prepare for the next wave of hungry children. They work steadily, efficiently, without complaint, though their feet ache and their backs hurt and the steam has made them perpetually damp. They do this job not because it is glamorous or well paid, but because it is necessary, because children need to eat, because someone has to do it. Some lunchboxes contain leftovers from last night's dinner, still warm in a thermos or wrapped carefully in foil, reheated before school and packed with hope that it will still be edible. By lunchtime, a piece of fried chicken, a slice of meatloaf, a scoop of casserole that has solidified slightly but still tastes like home. These lunches mark you as different, not in a bad way necessarily, but in a way that draws attention. The smell is stronger, more complex, filling the air around you with the scent of real cooking, of dinners eaten around a family table. Other children lean in, curious. "What is that?" they ask. You explain, sometimes proudly, sometimes self-consciously, depending on how the question is asked. Leftover lunches suggest abundance, a household where there is enough food to have extra. The fried chicken sits in its foil wrapper, the breading slightly softened from the moisture but still recognizable, still delicious. You unwrap it carefully, the foil crinkling loudly, and the smell of chicken and spices fills the air immediately. It is a powerful smell, unmistakable, cutting through the usual cafeteria odours of peanut butter and bologna. Heads turn, children nearby notice, their expressions ranging from curiosity to envy to mild confusion. Fried chicken for lunch is unusual. It is dinner food, special food, the kind of thing families have on Sundays after church or on birthdays or when company comes over. Seeing it in a school cafeteria, eaten casually at noon on a Wednesday, disrupts expectations. It suggests that your family cooks well, eats well, has enough resources to have leftovers worth saving. It suggests a certain level of domestic organisation, a mother who planned ahead, who reheated the chicken that morning, who wrapped it carefully and packed it with confidence that it would still be good hours later. The chicken is cold now, or at least room temperature, but it still tastes good. The meat is tender, seasoned with salt and pepper and whatever secret ingredients your mother uses. The breading is crisp in some places, soft in others, coating your fingers with a light film of oil and flour. You eat it with your hands, tearing off pieces, gnawing the bone clean because your mother taught you not to waste food. It is satisfying in a way that sandwiches rarely are, substantial and filling and deeply comforting. Around you, other children watch with varying degrees of interest. Some are openly envious, wishing their mothers packed such interesting lunches. Others are merely curious, never having seen leftover dinner in a lunchbox before. A few seem judgmental, as if bringing fried chicken to school is somehow improper, a violation of unspoken rules about what constitutes appropriate lunch food. You try to ignore these looks, focusing on your meal, but you are aware of being watched, of being different. Meatloaf travels well in a thermos, cut into thick slices and packed tightly to retain heat. By lunchtime it has cooled slightly, but is still warm enough to be pleasant. You eat it with a spoon, scraping the dense meat from the thermos, tasting the ketchup glaze and the breadcrumbs and the ground beef, your mother seasoned carefully. It is hearty, filling, the kind of food that sticks to your ribs, as your grandmother would say. It tastes like dinner, like family gathered around a table, like home. Casseroles are trickier. They do not always survive the journey intact. The cheese that was melted and bubbly last night has solidified into a pale, slightly rubbery mass. The noodles or rice have absorbed most of the sauce, becoming dense and sticky. But even in this compromised state, the casserole tastes good, familiar, comforting. You eat it slowly, savouring the flavours that remind you of home, of your mother's cooking, of meals shared with siblings who complained about having to eat their vegetables. The leftover lunch creates conversation. Children ask what you are eating, where it came from, whether it is good. These questions are opportunities for connection, chances to talk about your family, your home life, the meals you share. Some children are envious, wishing their families had leftovers to pack. Others are confused, not understanding why anyone would want dinner food for lunch. The conversations reveal differences in family culture, in eating habits, in the rhythms of domestic life. But leftover lunches also carry risk. If the food has not been packed properly, if it was not reheated sufficiently, if it sat too long in a warm locker, it can spoil. Food poisoning from a lunchbox is rare but not unheard of. Your mother worries about this, which is why she is so careful about temperatures, about wrapping, about choosing foods that travel well. She knows that packing leftovers is walking a fine line between providing a good meal and risking your health. Some mothers never pack leftovers, considering them inappropriate for lunch or too risky to transport. These mothers stick to sandwiches, to food specifically designed for lunchboxes, to the tried and true methods that minimize risk. But other mothers, more adventurous or more practical or simply tired of making sandwiches every single day, pack whatever is available, trusting that a piece of last night's pot roast is better than another peanut butter sandwich. That variety matters even if it means breaking unwritten rules. Not every child has a metal lunchbox. Some bring their lunches in brown paper bags folded at the top, name written in pencil on the side. These bags are practical, disposable, free if your father works at the grocery store or cheap if he does not. They crinkle when you open them, softened slightly by the moisture from your sandwich. Inside is usually something simple, a sandwich, an apple, maybe a handful of cookies wrapped in wax paper. The brown bag does not make a statement the way a metal lunchbox does. It does not announce your favourite television show or your aspirations to be a cowboy. It is humble, functional, and quietly invisible, which is sometimes exactly what a child wants. The brown bag sits on the cafeteria table, unremarkable among the colourful, metal lunchboxes surrounding it. It is plain, unmarked except for your name, which your mother wrote in her careful handwriting before sending you off to school. The bag is slightly grease-stained where the sandwich sits inside, the oils from peanut butter or mayonnaise seeping slowly through the paper. By lunchtime, the bag has absorbed some of the moisture from your apple, making it softer, more pliable, easier to fold. Opening a brown bag is quieter than opening a lunchbox. There is no metal clang, no satisfying click of a latch. You simply unfold the top, reaching inside to pull out your lunch. The paper rustles softly, a gentle sound that barely registers above the cafeteria noise. You remove items one by one, setting them on the table. Sandwich wrapped in wax paper, apple, maybe a napkin with cookies tucked inside. The bag itself serves as a placemat, flattened out beneath your lunch, catching crumbs and drips. Brown bags signal different things to different people. To some, they suggest poverty, families who cannot afford the $3 or $4 a metal lunchbox costs. To others, they suggest practicality, parents who refuse to spend money on unnecessary things when a paper bag works just as well. To still others, they suggest environmental consciousness before that term even exists, parents who prefer not to accumulate material goods, who value simplicity and functionality over appearance. Children with brown bags often feel invisible in the cafeteria. Their lunches do not draw attention or comment. There are no colourful cowboys or spacemen to admire, no matching thermos to show off. The bag is simply there, serving its purpose, then discarded at the end of lunch. This invisibility can be a blessing or a curse depending on the child. Some prefer not being noticed, grateful to eat their lunch without scrutiny. Others wish for the visibility that a proper lunchbox provides, the sense of belonging that comes from having what everyone else has. The contents of a brown bag lunch are usually simpler than lunchbox lunches. Without the structure of a metal container, without the designated spot for a thermos, mothers tend to pack fewer items, more basic foods. A sandwich and a piece of fruit is standard. Sometimes there is a treat, cookies or a small candy, but often there is not. The simplicity is partly practical, limited by what fits in a bag, and partly economic, reflecting tighter budgets and fewer resources. But simplicity does not mean the lunch is inadequate. A sandwich and an apple, packed with care by a mother who wants her child fed, is enough. It provides calories, protein, vitamins, everything a growing child needs to make it through the afternoon. The lack of variety might be boring, but boring is not the same as insufficient. Many children eat the same lunch from a brown bag every single day and grow up healthy, strong, well-fed. The brown bag is disposable, which has advantages and disadvantages. After lunch you crumple it up and throw it away. No need to carry it home, wash it, bring it back tomorrow. This is convenient, especially for children who tend to lose things. But it also means waste. Paper used once and discarded, accumulating in trash cans and eventually landfills. In an era before widespread environmental awareness, this waste goes largely unnoticed, but it exists nonetheless, a daily contribution to the growing problem of American disposability. Some children reuse their brown bags, carefully folding them after lunch, tucking them into coat pockets or book bags, bringing them home to be used again tomorrow. These children have been taught not to waste, to make things last, to extract every bit of use from every item. They smooth the wrinkles from the bag, erase yesterday's name, write a new one in pencil. The bag becomes softer with each use, more like cloth than paper, until finally it tears and must be replaced. In every cafeteria, in every school, there is at least one child who brings nothing at all. No lunchbox, no brown bag, no coins for the hot lunch line. They sit at the table with empty hands, watching the other children eat, trying to look as though they are not hungry, as though this is a choice they made rather than a circumstance beyond their control. Sometimes a kind teacher notices and quietly provides a meal. Sometimes another child shares, offering half a sandwich or an extra cookie without making a big deal out of it. Sometimes the child simply waits until the lunch period ends, stomach growling, and returns to class trying to focus on lessons when all they can think about is food. It is the quiet tragedy of the era, mostly unspoken, occasionally acknowledged, rarely solved. The child sits at the assigned table because sitting is required, because to skip the cafeteria entirely would draw more attention than simply attending empty-handed. They choose a spot at the end, away from the centre of activity, hoping to blend into the background, to become invisible. They rest their hands in their lap or fold them on the table, occupying space without participating in the meal unfolding around them. Other children notice. They always notice. Some are too young or too self-absorbed to wonder why their classmate has no lunch. They simply eat their own food, focused on their sandwiches and conversations. But others see, understand, feel uncomfortable with the knowledge that someone nearby is hungry while they have plenty. These children face a dilemma: acknowledge the absence of lunch and risk embarrassing their classmate, or ignore it and risk seeming callous. Most choose silence, unsure how to navigate this situation, aware that hunger carries shame in a country that prides itself on abundance. The hungry child develops strategies. They drink water from the fountain before lunch, filling their stomach with liquid to quiet the growling. They focus intently on something else, a book if they have one, a conversation if someone will include them, the view out the window if nothing else is available. They try to look content, untroubled, as though going without lunch is perfectly normal. Inside, their stomach cramps and their thoughts circle obsessively around food. But they keep these feelings hidden, knowing that revealing hunger invites pity or ridicule, neither of which helps. Sometimes a teacher notices. The good teachers, the ones who pay attention, who understand that teaching extends beyond academics to basic care, keep track of which children consistently lack lunch. They approach discreetly, never in front of other students, and offer a meal ticket, a sandwich from their own lunch, money for the cafeteria line. They frame it carefully, not as charity but as solving a small problem, making it easier for the child to accept. Would you like to help me with something during lunch? I have an extra sandwich. I cannot possibly eat both. Would you like one? These small kindnesses, offered with dignity, can make the difference between a child who gives up and a child who persists. Sometimes other children share. A classmate slides half their sandwich across the table with a casual, "I am too full to finish this. Want it?" Another offers cookies, an apple, anything extra they brought. These gestures, when done without fanfare or expectation of thanks, preserve dignity while providing sustenance. They teach lessons about generosity and community, about looking out for one another, about the responsibility those who have more bear toward those who have less. But sometimes no one notices or no one helps, and the child sits through the entire lunch period hungry. They watch other children unwrap sandwiches, bite into apples, sip from thermoses. They smell the hot lunch being served, the warm bread and gravy and vegetables. They swallow repeatedly, trying to work moisture into their dry mouth, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in their stomach. Time moves slowly when you're hungry, each minute stretching out, the lunch period feeling endless. When the bell finally rings, the hungry child stands with relief, grateful to return to the classroom where at least everyone is equal, where stomachs are hidden beneath desks, where hunger can be a private experience rather than a public one. They try to focus on afternoon lessons, but concentration is difficult when your body is sending urgent signals that something essential is missing. They wait for the school day to end, hoping there will be something to eat at home, though often home is where the problem starts, where cupboards are bare and meals are irregular. This quiet hunger, repeated day after day, shapes childhoods in profound ways. It teaches that the world is not fair, that some people have and others do not, that circumstances beyond your control can determine whether you eat. It builds resilience or breaks spirits, depending on the child, depending on how many other supports exist in their life. It creates shame and secrecy, the sense that needing food is something to hide rather than a basic human requirement. Occasionally your lunch is special. It is your birthday, or the last day before Christmas vacation, or your mother simply woke up feeling generous and decided to make your lunch memorable. On these days, your lunchbox contains something extraordinary. A cupcake with frosting, a slice of pie wrapped carefully in wax paper, a sandwich made with bakery bread instead of the usual loaf. Maybe there are 2 cookies instead of 1. Maybe your thermos is filled with hot chocolate instead of soup. You open your lunchbox with a sense of anticipation, and when you see what is inside, you feel a small surge of joy, of being special, of being loved in a way that is visible and tangible. The other children notice too, and for a moment, you are the center of attention. Your birthday lunch is the most special of all. Your mother's been planning it for days, maybe weeks, thinking about what would make you happy, what would make you feel celebrated. She bakes a cupcake the night before, frosting it carefully, adding sprinkles or a cherry on top. She wraps it with extra care, cushioning it with napkins so it will not get crushed, setting it gently in your lunchbox where it sits like a small, sweet promise. When you open your lunchbox at lunch, the cupcake is the first thing you see. The frosting has remained mostly intact, perhaps slightly smudged on one side, but still recognizable, still beautiful. The other children lean in to look, offering birthday wishes, asking if they can have a bite. You feel generous, magnanimous, willing to share this moment of abundance. You break off pieces of the cupcake, distributing them to friends, watching their faces light up as they taste the sweetness. The cupcake tastes better because it is special, because it represents not just sugar and flour, but celebration, love. The fact that your mother remembered your birthday and wanted to mark it in a tangible way, even if she forgot to sing that morning, even if there was no time for presents before school, the cupcake proves she was thinking of you, planning for you, caring about your happiness. Christmas lunch is also special. The last meal before vacation, before 2 weeks of freedom from school. Mothers go all out, packing treats they would never normally allow. Candy canes appear in lunchboxes, their red and white stripes cheerful and festive. Christmas cookies, shaped like trees and stars and snowmen, frosted in green and red. Slices of fudge, dense and chocolate, too rich to eat much of, but wonderful in small doses. Hot chocolate in thermoses, topped with tiny marshmallows that have melted slightly by lunchtime, creating a sweet, creamy layer on top. The cafeteria on the last day before Christmas break has a different energy, excitement and anticipation making everyone louder, more animated. Children compare their special lunches, trading treats, sharing the wealth. Teachers are more lenient, allowing extra talking, overlooking minor infractions, caught up in the holiday spirit themselves. The lunch period feels more like a party than a meal, a celebration of the season and the approaching freedom. Sometimes a special lunch appears for no reason at all, or at least no reason you understand. You wake up expecting a normal Tuesday, but when you open your lunchbox, you find something extraordinary. A sandwich made with Sunday pot roast, thick slices of tender beef with horseradish sauce, a slice of your favourite pie, the one your mother usually only makes for holidays, 2 cookies instead of 1, or a candy bar tucked beside your apple. You look at this lunch with confusion and delight, wondering what you did to deserve such treatment. Later you might learn the reason. Maybe your mother heard you crying last night over something that happened at school. Maybe your father got a bonus at work and she felt celebratory. Maybe she simply decided that ordinary days deserve celebration too, that childhood should have moments of unexpected joy. Or maybe there was no reason at all, just a mother who wanted to remind her child that they are loved, that they matter, that someone is thinking about them. The special lunch creates memories that last far longer than the food itself. Decades later, you will remember the taste of that birthday cupcake, the surprise of finding hot chocolate in your thermos, the feeling of being singled out for something good. You will remember how the other children reacted, how you felt simultaneously proud and shy, how you wanted the moment to last forever. These memories become part of your story, small moments of childhood joy preserved like flowers pressed between pages. Sitting in that cafeteria day after day, you learned more than just how to open a thermos without spilling. You learned about fairness and inequality, about abundance and scarcity, about the unspoken rules that govern social interaction. You learned that some families have more and some have less, and that this difference is visible in ways both large and small. You learned to be grateful for what you have, even when it is just a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. You learned to share when you can, to be kind when someone has less, to not draw attention to the differences that everyone can already see. You learned that food is never just food, that it carries meaning, tells stories, reveals truths that no one intended to share. You learned to read social hierarchies, to understand your place in the complex ecosystem of childhood. You learned that what you bring for lunch matters, that it affects how others see you, how they treat you, whether they want to sit with you or trade with you or be your friend. You learned that material possessions, even something as simple as a metal lunchbox, carry weight beyond their practical function, that they signal belonging or exclusion, status or struggle. You learned about class in ways no teacher could have taught you. You learned that the child with the elaborate lunch likely comes from a wealthier family, that the child with the simple lunch likely does not. You learned to recognize the signs of poverty, the repeated meals, the lack of treats, the brown bag instead of a lunchbox. You learned that these differences are rarely discussed openly but are always present, always visible, always shaping interactions. You learned empathy, or at least you had the opportunity to learn it. You saw children who had less than you, who were hungry when you were full, who watched others eat while they had nothing. You had choices in those moments, to share or to ignore, to help or to pretend not to notice, to include or to exclude. The choices you made in the cafeteria began shaping the person you would become, teaching you about generosity or selfishness, kindness or indifference. You learned about pride and shame, about how external circumstances can make you feel good or bad about yourself through no fault of your own. You learned that bringing a good lunch made you feel confident, included, worthy. You learned that bringing a poor lunch made you feel embarrassed, exposed, less than. These feelings, experienced young and often, became part of your understanding of the world, shaping your self-image in ways that would persist long after the lunchboxes were outgrown. You learned practical skills too. You learned to trade, to negotiate, to assess value and make deals. You learned to plan ahead, to save your treat for last, to ration your food so it lasted through the lunch period. You learned to be resourceful, to make do with what you had, to find satisfaction in simple things when elaborate things were not available. You learned about your mother's love through the lunches she packed. You learned that love could be expressed in practical ways, in the care she took wrapping your sandwich, in the apple she chose specially for you, in the cookie she baked late at night when you were already asleep. You learned that love was not just words or hugs, but also actions, daily repetitive actions that might seem small but added up to something significant. You learned about community, about the ways people take care of each other or fail to. You saw teachers who noticed hungry children and helped quietly. You saw classmates who shared generously without being asked. You also saw indifference, saw people look away from need, saw the ways communities can fail their most vulnerable members. These observations taught you about the world you lived in, about what was valued and what was ignored. You learned resilience, especially if your family struggled. You learned to hold your head up even when your lunch was inadequate, to deflect questions about why you had only a cheese sandwich again, to find ways to participate in cafeteria social life even when you had nothing to trade. You learned that circumstances might limit you but did not have to define you. That dignity was something you could maintain even when external markers suggested otherwise. Most importantly, you learned that everyone has a story. The child with the elaborate lunch might have a wealthy family or might have a mother trying desperately to compensate for other lacks. The child with nothing might have parents who are struggling or might have parents who are neglectful. The appearance of abundance or scarcity does not tell the whole truth, only hints at the complexities that exist behind every lunchbox, every family, every child sitting in that noisy, echoing cafeteria trying to navigate childhood one meal at a time. The lunch period ends with a bell, sharp and insistent, cutting through the noise of the cafeteria and signalling that it is time to clean up and return to class. You gather your wax paper, fold it carefully, tuck it back into your lunchbox along with your thermos and any uneaten fruit, Around you, other children are doing the same, the cafeteria filling with the sounds of lids snapping shut, benches scraping, voices rising in a final burst of conversation before silence is required again. You carry your lunchbox back to your classroom, setting it on the shelf or in your cubby, where it will wait until tomorrow morning when your mother packs it again. The cafeteria empties quickly, efficiently, leaving behind only the smell of food and the faint echo of children's voices. The transition from lunch to afternoon classes happens fast, perhaps too fast. One moment you're sitting with friends, eating and talking and laughing. The next moment the bell rings and everyone is standing, moving, gathering belongings, forming lines. The shift is abrupt, jarring, requiring you to switch mental gears from social relaxation to academic focus in a matter of seconds. You snap your lunchbox closed, the latch clicking with finality. The sound marks the end of this small daily ritual, the conclusion of the meal your mother prepared and you consumed. You pick up the lunchbox by its handle, feeling its lighter weight now that the food is gone, only the empty thermos and folded wax paper remaining inside. The metal is warmer now than it was this morning, heated by hours in the cafeteria, by your hands, by the general warmth of the crowded room. Around you, the cafeteria transforms from social space to emptying room. Children push benches back under tables with loud scraping sounds. Some carry their lunchboxes, others leave them on tables for a moment while they make one last trip to the trash can or the bathroom. Teachers stand near the exits, monitoring the flow of students, making sure no one runs or pushes, maintaining order in the chaos of transition. The lunch ladies begin their clean-up almost before the last child has left. They emerge from behind the counter, carrying large grey bins for collecting trash. They move efficiently through the rows of tables, scraping leftover food into bins, wiping down surfaces, restoring order. Their work is invisible to most students, who rarely think about what happens in the cafeteria after they leave, but it is essential, necessary, the unglamorous labour that makes tomorrow's lunch possible. You walk back to your classroom in a line, your lunchbox dangling from your hand, bumping occasionally against your leg. Other children walk beside you, some still chewing their last bites of lunch, others already focused on the afternoon ahead. Conversations continue in whispers, barely audible, just enough to maintain connection without drawing teacher attention. The classroom feels different after lunch. The morning's energy is dissipated, replaced by a drowsy, overfed lethargy that makes concentration difficult. The afternoon sunlight streams through windows, creating warm pools of light that make you sleepy. Your stomach is full, your body satisfied, and all you want to do is rest. But there are still hours of school remaining, lessons to learn, work to complete. You place your lunchbox in its designated spot, your cubby or the shelf beneath the coat hooks, wherever your teacher has determined lunchboxes belong. It sits there, empty and waiting, a small metal vessel that will make this journey again tomorrow. You glance at it for a moment, this ordinary object that carries such weight, such meaning, such quiet evidence of your family's circumstances and your mother's care. The afternoon stretches ahead. Mathematics, spelling, reading, perhaps art or music if it is the right day of the week. You settle into your desk, trying to focus, trying to be present, even as your mind drifts occasionally back to lunch, to the conversations you had, the trades you made, the way someone's cupcake looked so much better than your cookie. These thoughts are fleeting, unimportant in the larger scheme of your education, but they occupy space nonetheless. Reminders that social lessons and academic lessons happen simultaneously, that school teaches far more than what appears in textbooks. The teacher begins the afternoon lesson. You open your workbook, pick up your pencil, try to pay attention. But part of you is already thinking about tomorrow, about what your mother might pack, about whether you will have something good to trade, about where you will sit and who will sit beside you. The lunchbox, empty now in its cubby, has already become part of tomorrow's anticipation. Another day, another lunch, another opportunity to navigate the complex social world of childhood one meal at a time. The metal lunchbox, once so ubiquitous in American schools, eventually disappeared, replaced by soft-sided lunch bags, insulated coolers, and eventually by the rise of school cafeterias that served everyone. The images of cowboys and spacemen faded from view. The metal itself became nostalgic, collectible, something people hunt for in antique stores and online auctions. The simplicity of those lunches, the wax paper and thermoses and homemade cookies, gave way to prepackaged snacks, juice boxes, single-serving containers of everything. The social dynamics shifted too, became more complex in some ways, less visible in others. But the basic truth remained. What you bring for lunch still matters, still tells a story, still reveals something about where you come from and who you are. The decline of the metal lunchbox happened gradually over decades, not with any single dramatic moment, but through the slow accumulation of changes in American life. In the 1960s, soft-sided vinyl lunch bags appeared, lighter and more flexible than metal, featuring zippers instead of latches. They were marketed as modern, convenient, easier for children to open. Some families embraced them immediately. Others clung to their metal lunchboxes, preferring the durability and tradition. By the 1970s, plastic became dominant. Plastic lunchboxes were cheaper to manufacture, lighter to carry, available in even more colours and designs than metal ever was. They did not dent when dropped. They did not rust. They were in many ways superior from a practical standpoint, though they lacked the substantial weight and satisfying clang of their metal predecessors. Children who grew up with plastic lunchboxes never knew the particular sound a metal lunchbox made when set down on a cafeteria table, never experienced the way the metal warmed in your hand, never felt the heft that suggested permanence. The 1980s brought insulated, soft-sided bags with shoulder straps, designed for the increasingly busy American family. These bags could hold more than a lunchbox, could accommodate juice boxes and yogurt cups, and all the pre-packaged foods that were becoming standard. They were easier to clean, easier to store, easier in every way except for the way they utterly failed to be iconic, to mean something beyond their function. Simultaneously, school lunch programs expanded dramatically. What had been available only to the poorer students or in certain schools became universal. Federal funding increased. Cafeterias upgraded their equipment, expanded their menus, hired more staff. By the 1990s, in many schools, bringing lunch from home became the exception rather than the rule. Most children simply ate whatever the cafeteria served, eliminating the social dynamics of lunchbox comparison, creating instead a different kind of uniformity. The metal lunchboxes that survived, that were not thrown away or donated or left to rust in basements, became collectibles. Adults who had carried them as children began hunting for the exact model they remembered, the specific cowboy or superhero that had accompanied them to school. Antique stores started carrying them. Online marketplaces made them searchable, collectible, valuable. A lunchbox that cost $3 in 1955 might sell for $50 or $100 now, not because of its function, but because of what it represents. Childhood, nostalgia, a simpler time that may never have been as simple as memory suggests. The food inside lunchboxes changed even more than the boxes themselves. Wax paper gave way to plastic wrap, then to plastic bags, then to elaborate bento box arrangements with multiple compartments and carefully curated organic foods. Thermoses became less common as juice boxes and individual milk cartons became standard. Homemade cookies competed with and often lost to prepackaged snacks. individually wrapped and portion-controlled and marketed directly to children through television commercials. The social meaning of lunch shifted as well. In an era when most children eat cafeteria food, the distinctions between families become less visible, more subtle. But they do not disappear, they simply manifest differently. Now the distinctions appear in whether you can afford to buy lunch every day, or bring food from home to save money. They appear in whether you have the free or reduced price lunch that marks your family as low income. They appear in whether you bring elaborate bento boxes with organic produce or crumpled paper bags with whatever was on sale. What remains constant is that food at school continues to carry social meaning. Children still compare what they eat. They still notice who has more and who has less. They still learn lessons about class and status and fairness through the daily ritual of lunch. The metal lunchbox may have disappeared, but the dynamics it represented persist, adapted to new forms, new containers, new ways of revealing the same old truths about families and resources, and the visible markers of who belongs and who does not. Even now, decades later, you can still taste that lunch. The specific texture of white bread, slightly smushed from being packed too tightly. The sweetness of grape jelly mingling with peanut butter. The crisp snap of an apple. The juice running down your chin. The warmth of tomato soup from a thermos. The way it coated your throat and settled in your stomach, comforting and familiar. The chocolate of a homemade cookie, still slightly soft in the centre. These tastes are not just food memories. They are time machines, capable of transporting you instantly back to that cafeteria, that table, that moment when you opened your lunchbox and saw what your mother had packed. The peanut butter taste is the most persistent, the most immediate. Close your eyes and you can recreate it perfectly. The way the peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth, requiring your tongue to work it loose. The slightly salty, nutty flavour coating your entire mouth. The sweetness of the jelly cutting through, providing contrast and moisture. That specific combination, eaten thousands of times in childhood, becomes hardwired into memory in ways that more complex or sophisticated foods never quite achieve. The texture of the bread matters too. Modern bread is different. Softer somehow, more processed, more uniform. The bread of the 1950s had substance, had texture, had a slight resistance when you bit into it. It compressed under the weight of your teeth, then slowly expanded back. It stuck to your fingers if they were slightly damp. It left crumbs on the table, on your lap, on the floor, evidence of having been eaten. That specific texture, combined with the peanut butter and jelly, creates a sense memory so powerful that even thinking about it can make your mouth water decades later. The apple is another persistent memory. The way it snapped when you bit into it, the sound audible to children sitting nearby, the spray of juice, sweet and slightly tart, hitting your tongue immediately, the crisp white flesh, so different from the slightly mealy apples you sometimes encounter now. The way your teeth marks showed brown in the flesh where oxidation began immediately. Eating an apple was an event, required time and attention, left you with sticky hands and a core to dispose of, made you feel healthy and virtuous because everyone knew apples were good for you. The soup, when you had it, provided warmth that went beyond temperature. It was comfort in liquid form, the taste of home translated into something portable. Tomato soup tasted slightly sweet, slightly tangy, with an underlying richness from whatever cream or milk your mother had added. It was smooth on your tongue, slid down your throat easily, settled in your stomach with a warmth that spread outward through your whole body. On cold days, a thermos of soup was the best possible lunch, better than any sandwich, worth the extra effort your mother put into preparing it. The cookies are their own category of memory, the chocolate chips semi-melted from the heat of being packed, smearing chocolate on your fingers and face. The oatmeal texture, slightly chewy, with raisins that burst between your teeth. The peanut butter cookies, dense and crumbly, leaving a coating in your mouth that persisted through the afternoon. Each type of cookie has its own distinct memory, its own association with specific days or seasons or circumstances. What makes these taste memories so powerful is their connection to childhood itself, to a time when flavours were simpler, more pure, less complicated by adult knowledge of nutrition or calories or food politics. You ate what your mother packed without question, without analysis, simply accepting it as fuel and love combined. The tastes were familiar, repeated, reliable, creating a sense of security that food rarely provides in adulthood, when every meal feels like a choice weighted with implications. These memories also connect to your mother, to her hands preparing the food, to her care in selecting and packing, to her love expressed through these simple daily acts. Tasting peanut butter and jelly is tasting your mother's attention. Biting into an apple is biting into her concern for your health. Sipping soup is sipping her desire to comfort you. The food. Memories are inseparable from the emotional memories, from the sense of being cared for, looked after, loved. Sometimes, in adulthood, you try to recreate these tastes. You buy the same brand of peanut butter, the same grape jelly, the same white bread. You make a sandwich, cut it the same way your mother did, wrap it in wax paper even though plastic wrap would be more practical. You bite into it, hoping to recapture that childhood taste, that sense of simple satisfaction. And sometimes it works, sort of. The flavours are similar, close enough to trigger memory, to transport you briefly back. But something is missing. The context, perhaps. The cafeteria noise, the presence of other children, the weight of the metal lunchbox, the uncomplicated appetite of childhood. You can recreate the food, but you cannot recreate the moment, the feeling, the specific combination of circumstances that made that taste mean what it meant. For the mothers packing those lunches, it was never just about food. It was about love, expressed in the only way available in the quiet moments before dawn when the house was still sleeping. It was about doing their best with what they had, about making sure their children were fed, cared for, prepared for the day ahead. It was about pride, about wanting their child's lunch to reflect well on the family, to show that they were managing, that things were okay even when they were not. It was about worry, about whether there would be enough, whether the other children would judge, whether their child would be hungry or happy or somewhere in between. Every sandwich wrapped, every apple polished, every cookie tucked into a corner was a small act of devotion. The mother stands at the kitchen counter in the pre-dawn darkness, her housecoat wrapped against the morning chill, and considers what to pack. The decision is not simple, though it might appear so. She must balance nutrition with preference, must provide food her child will actually eat rather than trade away or throw out. She must work within her budget, stretching limited resources to feed the entire family for the entire week. She must consider practicality, packing foods that will survive hours at room temperature without spoiling. All of this calculation happens quickly, almost unconsciously, the result of years of practice. But beneath the practical considerations runs a current of emotion. She wants her child to be happy at lunch, to have something good to eat, to not feel lesser than the other children. She wants the lunch to communicate care, to be evidence that someone loves this child enough to prepare food specifically for them. She knows, perhaps better than anyone, that lunches are compared, that children notice differences, that her child's social standing might be affected by what she packs. This knowledge weighs on her, creates pressure that has nothing to do with actual hunger and everything to do with the social dynamics she only partially understands. She worries constantly about money, about whether she can afford to vary the menu or must pack the same thing day after day. Peanut butter and jelly is cheap, reliable, accepted. but she sees the flicker of disappointment in her child's eyes when they see the same sandwich 5 days in a row. She wishes she could provide variety, pack leftover roast beef or fried chicken, include cookies every day instead of just occasionally. But the budget is tight, unforgiving, requiring her to make choices that feel like failures even when they are simply realities. She takes pride in her lunches when they turn out well. The sandwich wrapped neatly, the apple polished to a shine, the cookie baked fresh the night before. These small accomplishments matter to her, proof that she is doing her job, caring for her family, managing her household competently. When her child comes home and mentions that someone complimented their lunch, she feels a warm glow of satisfaction, validation that her efforts are noticed and appreciated. But she also carries guilt, especially on days when the lunch is inadequate, when the bread is stale because she stretched the loaf too far, when there is no fruit because the budget ran out before the week ended, when the sandwich is plain cheese because there was nothing else available. She packs these lunches with a heavy heart, imagining her child's disappointment, hoping they will understand that she is doing her best, that this is not neglect but simply poverty, the grinding reality of not having enough. The lunch becomes a proxy for everything else she wants to provide and cannot. Every other mother seems to pack better lunches, seems to have more resources, more time, more energy. She compares herself constantly, finds herself wanting, carries this sense of inadequacy through her days. The lunch is not just lunch. It is evidence of her worth as a mother, her ability to provide, her success or failure at the most basic task of keeping her child fed. She thinks about her own childhood lunches, comparing them to what she now packs. Were they better? Worse? She cannot quite remember, the details lost to time, but she has a general sense that things were simpler then, that expectations were lower, that a simple sandwich was enough without judgment or social consequence. She wonders when lunch became so complicated, so weighted with meaning, so fraught with anxiety. Late at night, after everyone else is asleep, she sometimes allows herself to imagine a different life, a life where money is not so tight, where she can buy bakery bread and fresh fruit every day, where she can include treats without worrying about the cost. A life where packing lunch is simply a task rather than a daily negotiation with scarcity and shame. But morning always comes, and with it the reality of what she has and what she must do with it. She packs the lunch. She snaps the lunchbox closed. She sets it by the door where her child will grab it on the way to school. And she sends up a small, quiet prayer that it will be enough, that her child will be fed and happy and kind, that the lunch will communicate what she cannot always say aloud. I love you. I am trying. You matter to me more than anything. If you could open one of those 1950s lunchboxes today, it would look almost quaint. The portions so small, the choices so limited, the simplicity so stark compared to the elaborate bento boxes and organic snack packs of modern childhood. But there was something pure about those lunches, something honest. They were what they were, no more, no less, packed by mothers who did not have time for Pinterest boards or food blogs, who simply did what needed to be done each morning before sending their children out into the world. And perhaps that is what makes them so powerful in memory, not because they were perfect, but because they were real, tangible proof that someone cared enough to make sure you had something to eat. Looking at a 1950s lunchbox now, through modern eyes, the differences are striking. The sandwich wrapped in wax paper seems primitive compared to the specialized sandwich containers with built-in ice packs that keep food cold until lunch. This single apple seems inadequate compared to the multiple fruits, pre-cut and arranged artfully, that fill modern lunch bags. The homemade cookie seems almost risky compared to the pre-packaged, allergen-free, nutritionally labelled snacks that dominate today's lunches. But something was gained in that simplicity. The lunches were real food, recognisable food, made by hand in home kitchens. The sandwich was bread and filling, nothing more complicated than that. But it was made by someone who knew your preferences, who spread the peanut butter the way you liked it, who included or excluded jelly based on your taste. The apple was an actual apple, not apple slices in a plastic bag with preservatives to prevent browning. The cookie was made from a recipe, probably handwritten, possibly passed down through generations, baked in an oven by someone who cared whether you enjoyed it. Modern lunches are often healthier, more balanced, more carefully calibrated to provide proper nutrition. They include whole grains and lean proteins and vegetables in multiple colours. They avoid processed foods, minimise sugar, eliminate additives. They are by every measurable nutritional standard superior to the white bread and peanut butter sandwiches of the 1950s. But they are also more complicated, require more time, cost more money, create more pressure on parents trying to pack the perfect lunch. The social dynamics have shifted but not disappeared. Children still compare lunches, still notice who has more elaborate food, still make judgments based on what appears in lunch bags. But now the distinctions are different. The child with the organic, locally sourced, carefully balanced lunch might be envied or might be mocked, depending on the school culture. The child with the simple sandwich might be seen as poor or might be seen as normal, depending on context. The rules have changed, but the game continues. Children still sorting themselves into hierarchies based partly on what they eat. What has been lost is perhaps the directness, the simplicity of the social messages. A 1950s lunchbox communicated clearly. This family has resources, or this family is struggling. This mother has time, or this mother is overwhelmed. This child is cared for, or this child is neglected. Modern lunches communicate more ambiguous messages, harder to interpret, layered with questions about values and priorities, and parenting philosophies that go far beyond simple abundance or scarcity. The metal lunchbox itself, when you hold one now, feels substantial, in a way modern lunch containers do not. It has weight, permanence, the sense of being built to last for years rather than a single season. The metal is cool and smooth, slightly dented perhaps, marked by decades of use. The images on the outside have faded but remain recognisable. Cowboys or spacemen or cartoon characters that define a particular era of American childhood. Inside, if the lunchbox has been preserved, you might still smell faint traces of the food it once carried. The ghost of peanut butter, the metallic tang of thermos coffee or soup, the sweet hint of cookies long since eaten. These smells trigger memories more powerful than photographs, more immediate than stories. They transport you directly back to childhood, to the cafeteria table, to the moment of opening the lunchbox and discovering what your mother packed. Collectors prize these lunchboxes now, display them on shelves, never use them for their intended purpose. They have become artifacts, objects that represent a time and a way of life that no longer exists. But for those who actually used them, who carried them to school every day, who opened them in crowded cafeterias and ate what was inside, they are something more than artifacts. They are vessels of memory, containers that once held not just food but childhood itself, tangible evidence of a simpler time when a sandwich and an apple were enough, when a mother's love could be wrapped in wax paper and carried in a metal box. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets and feel your breathing slow, take a moment to think about all those mothers standing in dim kitchens before dawn, wrapping sandwiches in wax paper, polishing apples until they gleamed, tucking cookies into metal boxes with care. Think about the children who carried those lunch boxes to school, swinging them by the handle, the metal clanging softly with each step. Think about the cafeteria tables where friendships were built over trades, and tears were hidden behind smiles, and lessons about fairness and kindness were learned without a single textbook. These people did not think they were living through history. They were simply living, doing what needed to be done each day, packing lunches and eating them and cleaning up afterward. They faced inequalities and struggled with scarcity and worried about whether they were doing enough, whether their children would be happy, whether a simple sandwich could communicate love in ways that words sometimes could not. And yet they kept going, kept packing, kept caring, kept showing up day after ordinary day. Maybe tomorrow you can carry something forward from their example. Maybe you can slow down enough to notice the care someone puts into a meal. Maybe you can share something you have with someone who has less. Maybe you can simply appreciate the small, quiet acts of love that happen every day, mostly unseen, rarely celebrated, but absolutely essential to holding our lives together. Because history is not always grand gestures and dramatic moments. Sometimes it is just a metal lunchbox and the person who filled it, a simple lunch and the love it carried, an ordinary day made extraordinary by the fact that someone cared enough to make sure you had something to eat. Sleep well tonight, friend, and tomorrow, maybe pack your lunch with a little extra care, remembering all the mothers and fathers who did the same, who turned the ordinary act of preparing food into a quiet daily declaration of love. Good night.